Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui, coming to you from Beijing. In a country currently reflecting on its growth at all costs economic model, the film adaptation of the Chinese best-selling novel Wolf Totem has fueled discussions on the relationship between humans and nature. The 2004 novel is a passionate eulogy to a ferocious and far-flung way of life, and also to the wolf, the foremost predator of the grasslands. However, an ethnic Mongolian writer now claims that both the movie and the book have distorted the truth that are based on a fake culture forced upon Mongolians. Have wolves ever been totems for Mongolians? Are the disappearance of nomadic culture and grasslands inevitable in China's modernization process? And what political metaphor is the author trying to deliver in his advocacy of wolf culture? To answer these questions, I'm happy to be joined in the studio by Ms. Han Hua, Deputy Secretary General of the International Communication Committee at the China Film Association, Professor David Moser with the Capital Normal University, who participated in the production process of the film Wolf Totem, and Mr. Einar Tangen, an author and a columnist. But before we start the interview, let's look at this background report. Adapted from Chinese writer Jiang Rong's eponymous novel, the film Wolf Totem tells the story of a Han Chinese student sent from the city to Inner Mongolia for re-education during the Cultural Revolution. In the vast grasslands, he learns about nomadic life and becomes fascinated with wolves, which, according to the story, are worshipped as totems by the Mongols. But ultimately, a government official orders all the wolves in the area to be killed, leaving a severe impact on the ecology of the grasslands. The film is a Chinese-French co-production directed by Jean-Jacques Annaud, who won an Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film in 1976.
The message that captured my heart when I read the book was the need of balance between human presence and animal presence. Therefore, let's say industrialization and nature. I felt it was a strong, very universal message, although it is in a specific place, specific time, in Mongolia. I read it as something that could have happened in France, in my country, or in America. In the same years, it did happen everywhere.
It took the team 7 years to get the film done. One of the most difficult tasks lay in taming the wolves. Thanks to 4 years of effort from animal trainer Andrew Simpson, the film turned the untamed animals into A-list actors. Besides extolling the value of wolves, the original book also fuels discussions on the relationship between farming culture and nomadic culture, which, according to the author, is mirrored in the conflict between sheep and wolf. Although both the book and the film have achieved great success, they have also faced criticism from cultural scholars. An ethnic Mongolian novelist, Guo Xuebo, has criticized the movie for distorting the truth. He said it is based on a fake culture forced upon Mongolians because wolves have never been a totem for Mongolians. Since the publication of the book, debate over the wolf totem has persisted, but in terms of provoking cultural self-reflection, the film is no doubt a great success. Welcome to Dialogue. Hua, why do you think the movie is so popular and successful?
I think the movie, my personal opinion is that the movie conveys the strong philosophy and art value very successfully. And it is called one of the most sincere movies in China's movie history, and which I personally agree with that. Out of a 10 scoring system, I give the movie 8.
You are being very philosophical, David, to share with her about the philosophical interpretation.
I think it's one of the most awaited films. When Wolf Totem came out, I remember my friends all talking about this book and saying, "You've got to read this book," and they were struck not only by the story but by the philosophy behind it. That what we're going to talk about, this notion of the metaphor of Chinese culture being sheep-like and everything. And so when this movie came out, a lot of people wanted to see it because they'd read the book. So I think that's another reason for its success.
Well, inevitably, as any civilization culture goes forward, there's always this kind of fond longing for the simplistic past. And I'm not taking anything away from the cinematographic value, beautiful, all that type of thing. But the underlying message, I think, is a little bit lost, a little bit confusing. I think it blends too much of the author's own, perhaps, guilt and feelings about his past, and tries to create an allegory that somehow goes beyond that. And I don't think it really works. It's not, the wolf is not this noble savage. It is just something that people idealize when they live in cities, not when they live in farms.
I believe most of us love animals to some degree, but what do you think of the image of a wolf? Do you love it, do you like it, or do you, are you afraid of this ferocious
I had
animal?
to admit that the novel of the wolf totem has changed my previous image of wolves. I have to admit that. Before 2004, before I first read the novel, wolf in my image, in my opinion, is like selfish, greedy, very cruel. But after reading that, I kind of think that there may be another side of wolves, especially in the context of the Inner Mongolia, in the grassland. In that environment, wolf can be good friends or can be kind of both competitor and friends
but
for that nature.
have you ever wrestled with the problem about distinction between fact and fiction? David, I'd like to have your take.
Well, I mean, I've never been out there in the Mongolian steppes, you know, so I don't know. But some of the people who were talking to me, who had been or knew people who'd been involved in the filming, told me stories about the wolves and the ways that they behaved. Mm-hmm. They were astonishingly intelligent animals, maybe as intelligent, you know, I mean, more as much as some kind of primate or dolphin kinds of behavior. Mm-hmm. And they told me stuff that was more amazing than anything that I heard.
You know, that's wonderful, except if that intelligence and that ferociousness is being used against you and your livelihood. You know, it's very
No, but that's a different. It's different. That's a different issue.
Different issue.
No, that's a different issue.
I mean, here
the point
it's
is
city people in cities love to idealize these great open spaces and
it's not idealizing them.
The success of the novel and the
Yes,
author
it's not idealizing them.
1960, the average lifespan of a Mongolian was less than 55 years old. Since that time,
not
it
because
has
of
gone
wolves.
up. No,
That's
but
right.
but this idealization that you can go back to this simplistic past, this noble savage, that you can go back and be in touch with nature, that there are natural laws, is really just kind of silly romanticism. It's the kind of things that we went through in reaction to when Hobbes was saying life is short, brutish, and nasty. And in replace of that, people started thinking about the noble savage, in India and things, in the American Indian, etc., etc. This is just something that societies go through. It's a kind of return to sentimentalism, and on its ugly side, it leads to things like what we're dealing with now with the ISIS. People are romanticizing these vicious, I don't know how else you would describe them, more like wolves. They're intelligent, all right? They get together. They certainly are very effective.
Now, David, according to the accounts of some of my friends who lived in Inner Mongolia for many years since the childhood, they said, yes, indeed, most of the Mongolians, the herds, were quite afraid of this ferocious animal. Sure. However, one part of the movie, Wolf Totem, did impress most of the moviegoers, what we call the heaven funeral. By the time the nomadic people died,
right,
they preferred to be eaten up by the wolves, so that in this way they could go back to the environment itself. What do you think of the philosophical message, if any, of this part of the movie?
That was in the movie. It was not a large part of it. Mm-hmm. And in fact, most of what we're talking about, the intellectual, the spiritual, the metaphor, was actually largely absent from the movie. There was a love story that was sort of truncated. A lot of the wolf behavior was only hinted at. I don't think they managed to capture even a tenth of what was in the book, in the movie, including this.
This role, who might be described as the tribal chief, Bilige, says there's a big life and a small life. Now, the big life is the grassland itself.
Right.
Small lives could be refer to human beings, the wolves, the sheep, cattle, so on and so forth on the grassland. What do you think of the perfect cycle that's shared by humans, animals, and the environment itself?
Well, despite
perfect, there is no perfect cycle.
I know he's going to argue.
Yes, exactly.
I know he's going to argue, but there are two sides.
Tell that
to
the dinosaurs about this perfect cycle.
No. This is. I think you're wrong. This is. There was another meaning, which is not a matter of sentimental nostalgia. It's just a fact of nature that there's an ecological balance, and all that he was being aware of was saying, look, the wolves are part of the ecological balance.
Perhaps because of the misery and the political chaos that he went through during the Cultural Revolution. In the movie, according to the depiction of Jiang Rong, author of the movie, it's man, the herds, the nomadic people who took the blame for destruction of the grassland. It could be kind of struggles between those who live in the Eastern Mongolia and those who live in Western Mongolia. And it's also perhaps about the struggle between the farming culture and agricultural way of life. So which message do you take more seriously?
I think it's just part of the argument from that certain period of time, specific period of time, in the context of Cultural Revolution, in the context of the dispute created by human beings with the East Mongolia and Western Mongolia. Just as we discussed before, there's no perfect cycle, I would say. It's like a moving balance among the heaven life or bigger life and the smaller life, or a moving balance among human beings, society, culture, environment, nature, and animals.
I would echo that sentiment more in the sense that there's always this argument philosophically in literature, everywhere you go, between individual and the collective. All right, we all long to be free and wild, and we have that side of us. And on the other side, there's the adult side, which says, look, we have to live together. There has to be rules. There has to be accommodation. We're going through this globally right now when you have people who said, no, everyone has to live the way I want to live. This is kind of like a childish response that everybody should obey one line, whether it's the United States or ISL or whatever. Anybody says that everybody has to obey things, that is the wolf-like behavior.
Right, but this is not a matter of individual versus collective. The Mongolians were not an individualist society either. They were just ones who were seeing themselves as a part of the natural balance, and neither were the Chinese who came in and started taking over. It's not a matter of individual versus collectivism. It's a matter of seeing humans as only a part of nature and not masters of nature.
Let me go back to what Hua says about the change in her attitude towards wolf before and after reading the book Wolf Totem by Jiang Rong. Now, what do you make of the metaphor that may be deeply implied in raising the wolf cub by the author himself? Now, what do you think of the affections that may have changed your attitude towards wolf? He raised a wolf cub, and obviously he developed a profound love for the small animal, and therefore he was criticized. He came under threat from the rest of the Nords living in the same piece of grassland. But in the end, he killed the wolf cub. Why?
He has to.
He has to.
Yeah, according to the novel, because I don't know the nature of the wolves until I read the book and understand more about the wolves' nature.
It may have highlighted the brutality of a human nature, because we have to look at the debate about human nature and wolf nature. Which is more brutal?
Human.
Yeah.
Because some of my friends argue strongly, Yang Rui, we should talk about a return from wolf nature to human nature. And in his account, in his words, human nature should be far more benevolent than wolf nature. But look at the Holocaust in the Second World War. Look at Nanking Massacre and the Gulag of Stalinism during the former Soviet Union years, and IS brutality, burning captives alive. Now, which side is more brutal?
It's really hard to say. I think every nature has two sides, brutal side as well as the balanced or more balanced side. I think which makes the human beings at the top of the food chain or kind of quote-unquote master of the society is that we have not only, part of our human nature is to being rational, to be reasoning of the things we should do or we plan to do.
Do you agree, David?
I think you can make too much of a metaphor. There's a confusion of levels here. There's this notion of survival, which involves killing on the part of us or any animal. We're animals. Humans are animals, right?
Are you talking about social Darwinism?
I was going to say social Darwinism. But humans are different from animals. But the key awareness is that the philosophy of the Mongolians, it's not a matter of, they acknowledged that the wolves were ferocious, that they were killers, And they also acknowledged that they themselves were killers. They knew that they ate meat. We all are meat eaters. They're very conscious of that. But that's why, in fact, that when they died, they gave back their own meat to the people that they knew were going to eat them. It was an acknowledgement. It's an acknowledgement that we're all part of the cycle. We all kill, and the issue is keeping that cycle in balance. I'm not saying that's what I think. That was what the philosophy was in the movie.
Anna?
That was in the movie, but let us make a distinction here between what was in the movie and portrayed about Tibetan culture and what is actually
you mean
reality.
Mongolian
culture. Excuse me. The issue. I mean, we've had a writer who's come out. He's Mongolian and said, quite frankly, this is all a fiction. We don't worship the wolf. There isn't this big thing going on. They were natural competitors to us, yes. But giving this back, I mean, almost all cultures say dust to dust. There's always this sense of it. Things. The fact that they leave their dead on the ground there, I don't even know if that is necessarily true. But I did a search of Mongolian literature in terms of wolves. One story comes up, and it's basically how two clever animals prevented themselves from being eaten by a wolf who was seen as ferocious and very terrifying. So I don't necessarily follow that. So we should be making that distinction.
Thank you very much, gentlemen and the lady Hanhua. We're talking about the impact of the latest release of a movie, Wolf Totem. It's a discussion about the imagination and relationship concerning wolves, humans, and the grasslands in Mongolia. We'll be back in a short while and discuss more of other issues. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's take a second look at why people are saying there could be a wolf in his or her heart.
I would say it's decided by the genes. Yeah. Sometimes when people are aggressive in doing finish some tasks in work or in life, maybe you should be having some wolf spirit to finish that.
Maybe it's not just decided by the chin. It's decided by Machiavellianism. He's talking about politics.
Well, let's
the wolf, the lion, and the human aspect of politics, right?
Let's put it in. How about circumstances? When people are thrust into terrible danger or things in wars and things like that, they do act like wolves. They're cunning, strong, vicious. They protect their own. They go after other people. So I see it more in today's society. It is within us, but it comes out during the circumstances.
That's why we need to have a rule of law and ethics, a code of conduct to regulate our behavior. Yeah, and we become more civilized.
If we were all wolves, and that would not
wolf
end
spirit
well.
And culture side, right? Civilized side.
That's why social Darwinism is not a valid viewpoint, because we have this extra added layer of rationality. We know that we're part of the process. We're not just instinct. And I think that's the reason. But the other thing that the book brings up, and some of my friends were excited about the book, was that for them, they said, this explains why China was bullied by the foreign powers. We, as a Chinese nation, have this sheep-like nature that's based on our Confucian background, that we're sort of backward, ignorant, materialistic, passive, and we follow the leader and all this kind of thing. I think I understand why they think that. Said, whereas the foreign cultures, they ate meat and they're rapacious.
But excuse me, you put your finger on a very interesting point here about a parallel comparison that Jiang Rong, the author, drew between the wolf nature and the ability of Mongolians to conquer much of Europe quite a few centuries back.
Right.
So, do you think this works for our explanation about the wolf spirit?
No. I mean, there's always been civilization in the barbarians. If you go back to Rome, it was conquered, 3 or 4 times by Goths, Vandals, etc.
Maybe that's because they had wolf nature.
It was, no. It was. They were out in the wilds and they saw something good and they went after it. Yes, they were wolves. They were rapacious. But I mean, in that particular case, it's circumstances. They saw something they wanted and they had no moral compunction, no rule of law, nothing holding them back. Much the way that we have forces in the world that are working today.
Well, my point I was going to say is that you can only take a metaphor so far. The reality of the situation is it's not a matter of wolves against sheep. We're all the same species. We're all human beings. And in the movie, you notice that the wolves themselves, they actually cooperated with each other. they didn't, in the movie themselves, they would do very sophisticated moves in order to capture the sheep and the horses.
Excuse me, do you call the IS part of our human species? I mean, the
I do.
brutality of
I do.
the Islamic extremism,
I absolutely
jihadism
do.
there in the Middle East,
they are suffering
who
from
burned captives alive, and you call them a human? Come on, give me a break.
They are delusional. They have not seen the truth that I just said, that we're all part of the same
They are
species.
showing the brutal side in the modern society.
Yeah, but the fact is they do exist. They are human beings, and they're doing inhuman things to other human beings.
Perhaps most of those who join the IS believe that this is the doomsday, and one day we're going to have the apocalyptic world, and so anyway, our days are numbered, therefore they started massacre.
That's the difference between wolves and the IS. They believe in some final vision. The wolves believe in dinner.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's their instinct, whereas we can transcend that, supposedly.
Ironically, the movie is based on the taming of some of the wolves by someone called Andrew Simpson from Canada. What do you make of the irony? Now, the movie is supposed to encourage the release of domesticated animals, let them be an integral part of the Mother Nature. However, what happened throughout the process of the production of the movie, that guy from Canada tamed the wolves, who are their best friends. And by the way, in the credits towards the end of the movie, each of the wolves has their own names there to show respect for the animal. I mean, that surprised most of the Chinese moviegoers.
Yeah, where are they
the
today?
author called the wolves are actually the leading actors of this movie. So they
are the protagonists.
I think to give them a fair judgment is that this is the best the movie can do.
But animal protectionists would fight. They would argue strongly against using animals as the actors and actresses.
I don't think
they have a happy
necessarily.
ending. I would say,
Well, the question is, what happens to the wolves now? Do they get released? Do they get stuck on a farm?
Well, see,
they are in Canada now because they can only understand the command of English. So they are being sent to Andrew Simpson as the gift. As the free gift to bring the wolf back to Canada.
Let me walk one extra mile in the direction of your description on the ending of wolves. Towards the end of the movie, Wolf Totem, that young wolf was released, right? After exterminating all of the others upon the order of that political instructor from the PLA, whose mission was to ensure the normal life of the herds and nomads, the nomadic life in Inner Mongolia. What do you make of the token language and the implications through the release of this animal?
The meaning of that was more or less spelled out in the movie and in the book, as I recall, too. The point that the elder Abba, made to the guy, Chen Zhen was his name, it says the wolves are meant to be out and hunt on their own. If you tame them and you keep them as your pet and you feed them, they become slaves, and you rob them of their dignity. And so his tension was between keeping the animal that he loved and letting it go free, and in the end they chose to let it go free. Which you're asking, what are they doing with the wolves they tamed? Maybe they've robbed them of their dignity too. I don't know.
Towards the end of this very lively discussion, let me ask you. Let me ask you one sensitive question about the movie director himself. Many are surprised by the fact that the producers choose Jean-Jacques Annaud to direct the film because it was widely reported that this French guy had been banned from China for his 1997 film 7 Years in Tibet. According to Annaud, the French director, he was surprised that this movie could pass the censorship without a problem. I mean, that surprised me as well. What do you think of the leniency, if any, towards the release of this movie eventually?
That shows the relaxation or loosening up of the China's censorship policy, I would say. And plus, it's a market-oriented decision by the China Film Group, who is the leading investor and producer of this film. It has been 3 years for the two teams, the French team and the Chinese team, to work together. So I think all the censorship has been going on during the past 3 years. So it's more like a friendly cooperation. And it actually set a very good example for the co-production movies in the China's movie industry and history.
That's the silver lining for the invasion of Hollywood movies into the Chinese market.
Well, certainly letting this movie filmed was a good move for soft power, because it's being released worldwide and it's popular acclaim.
Wolf nature could be part of soft power? I mean, I feel puzzled.
No. It's just, the point
the freedom
is that
to say wolf spirits.
China has allowed this. What could be quite frank, I mean, the author who wrote this book was clearly anti-establishment and has participated in a number of political events, not on exactly the favored list of Beijing, but the project still went forward, and I think that is a very important soft power and confidence showing move by China.
Yeah. What do you make of the gesture, symbolic gesture by Jiang Rong, the author, to give the $10,000 worth of the Man Asia Literature Prize to a guy who helped the local Mongols, help educate local Mongols about legal rights that they should enshrine in protecting the new normal of grasslands, if it could be called new normal, because much of the Inner Mongolia must have been destroyed by the extraction of natural resources, regardless of huge damage that we are doing to the ecological balance there.
Oh, this is the news, but I appreciate this effort. As you put it, this is the new normal. The Inner Mongolia is trying to build with the help from the environment, with the help from the government. So, yeah, this is a good effort.
No, I think it shows goodwill on the part of the author, and that he was actually genuinely attached to and moved, and his life was changed by living in the grasslands there. So, I mean, it makes sense to do that. And also, it's obvious that the environmental impact on the grasslands is one that's now regretted by everyone and was not necessarily predicted by everybody.
Perhaps it's a part of his redemption. If you look at the misery that he went through and all of the controversies that flared up about his own character, behavior, due to either the family problems or the political chaos during the Cultural Revolution, he wanted to do something to balance his mind side and attitude towards human relationship and perhaps the grassland itself.
Maybe that's the greatest irony here, that he was actually attacking, in a sense, the society he came from, but in the end he will give it a great gift by producing something of great value that can be examined by people worldwide.
This is a controversial one, a debatable one, and a very successful movie that we have ever seen, for me personally. So what can we learn in terms of the inspirations that we can draw from the movie? Very quickly, Hua.
Artistic value, as well as the strong philosophy it conveyed, and everything needs professionalism in the movie production process justifies the political differences and the cultural differences.
So it seems justice has been done towards the end of the movie. What do you think, David?
I think some of the deeper issues that have to do with the relationship between man and nature, and this notion of the relationship of survival and this sort of Darwinian issue that we're talking about, and how to create a civilization and clash of civilizations, is in the book. And you should read the book, not see the movie, I think.
All right.
I think if you want to be, I think future success in movies, make sure you have some animals, especially dogs, since the dog is now the official second child of China.
Thank you very much. With that, we come to the end of this edition of Dialogue. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.